Adler. Thank you, Emily. I should have known with Mrs. James as your class advisor that CTDFS would have made it into the introduction. That's what we called it. And thank you to the Board of Trustees. As many of you know, I'm the proud daughter of the board's outgoing chairman, and my dad had one piece of advice for me today. Keep your remarks short. Like, I know you know he always does. And especially, thank you, Mrs. Nelson, for inviting me to speak here today. You were, and continue to be, one of my first true role models. I'm not sure if you remember, but upon the ascent of Half Dome, my class, which I know you just did, conquered it, my class called Mrs. Nelson. And that day, that afternoon, we were indeed your daughter's strong. I will always cherish your mentorship and support. And to the parents of today's graduates, a big congratulations to all of you who have waited so patiently for this very bittersweet moment. Today is as much a celebration of all of you as it is of the women on this stage. But let's get to it, to the class of 2011. When I was trying to decide what to speak about today, I realized just how long it's been since I was a student. Many of you were only 3 when I was a freshman. And where's the freshman class? Where's the freshman? Many of you weren't even born yet. I'm short, but I'm old. Initially, I thought I should talk about the grand and extensive lessons I've learned since being a student at Webb. But what I realized is that it's the lessons I learned here as a student that have guided me. I'll start with what I learned from the honor code. Who's on the honor committee here? Always tell the truth. So I am not going to sugarcoat this. Life beyond Webb will feel a lot like the wilderness. You'll have steep mountains to climb, trails that end without a clear next step, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, you'll feel you're completely out there on your own. But the good news is, it turns out you have what it takes. Webb, and I know Larry and Doc are here, Webb is a great place for learning how to conquer the wilderness. The following are 3 lessons I learned while exploring the wilderness at Webb, a survival kit of sorts. Lessons that I've turned to surprisingly often in the years since I graduated. Lesson 1. When in doubt, just put one foot in front of the other. I can't tell you the number of interviews that have kicked off with one question. So what exactly is the Peccary Club? I am the first to admit that I was not the most promising paleontologist in Webb's history. But I sure loved those peccary trips. My first trip after freshman year lasted 3 very long weeks, each day with a different challenge. Each night, I'd stay up late, worried I wouldn't finish the next day's hike. My fear reached its peak the night before we hiked the Trilobite Ridge, Fossil Ridge, a 12,000-foot summit in eastern Colorado. Who's been there? Anyone? Anyone been there? Doc, raise your hand. Larry, raise your hand. The morning of the hike, my nerves were in full gear. I packed my backpack, filled my Nalgene, and laced up. We set out for the hike. Switchbacks for most of the way, and then pretty much straight up. And you know what? Much to my amazement, we all made it. Just by putting one foot in front of the other. I often return to that moment on Fossil Ridge. When challenges seem overwhelming or insurmountable, or just plain scary, I remind myself that by just putting one foot in front of the other, you'll get pretty far. My first week at Harvard was almost as intimidating as Fossil Ridge. I was a 5'1", actually 5'1 3/4" fish in a very big, smart, and accomplished East Coast pond. I was one in a class of 1,600, not 27. Classes have been smaller than yours, believe it or not. Campus spanned Harvard Yard, Boston, Cambridge, not familiar Claremont. New friends, new classes, 4 seasons. Took a second. I lost my page. But every day, I took small steps. I got to know my roommate, met new people in the dorms and the dining hall, learned that pizza, not its own food group, and punch, not always punch. Small steps, but you'll get there. Of course, there will be moments of panic, and you will get intimidated. But you have to remember, Webb is no walk in the park either. You are equipped with the best education and the best values you could possibly hope for. And in those moments of panic, you just keep your cool, keep moving forward, put one foot in front of the other. Lesson 2. Where there's not a trail, there's often an opportunity. Next story, Doc, get ready. Okay. The summer before senior year, Doc wanted to visit the Kapirowitz Formation. I had never heard of it either. Unlike Fossil Ridge, there are no trails in the Kapirowitz. Time magazine has described this area as desolate and unspoiled, and that's an understatement. No campsites, no trails, no other hikers. In the Kapirowitz, I could keep putting one foot in front of the other, but there was no guarantee where I'd end up or if I'd be dinner for a hungry cub. One day hiking, Doc said, with uncharacteristic zest, "Caroline, over here." There, 10 feet, I knew it must be good. There, 10 feet in front of him, was a glistening dinosaur claw. And I know that is not the official name, and I am sorry. It has been a long time. The fossil was just sitting there on a boulder, waiting to be found. Flash forward, naturally, nearly 10 years later, to the summer of 2008, the final days of the Clinton campaign. That summer was tough, not surprisingly, particularly for junior staff like me. We had all joined the campaign for very noble reasons, but there were realities about losing and being unemployed. I faced a tough dilemma. Stick with Hillary Clinton or accept a job with the other very historic and unprecedented campaign that was almost assured a victory in November. Even though the Clinton campaign trail was officially ending, I stuck with her. Working for Hillary Clinton for me, personally, was working for my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, generations to come. I personally could not step away from that. And you know what? That single decision, choosing the unknown, undetermined trail, could not have worked out better. A few months ago, I was flying with Secretary Clinton to Egypt and Tunisia, where she was about to meet with those involved in the recent uprisings of the Arab Spring. Walking with Secretary Clinton one afternoon through Tahrir Square in Cairo, I kept pinching myself. There wasn't a clear trail to my current job, just like there wasn't a clear trail to that glistening fossil. And thank goodness for that. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do with your life. It's okay. You don't have to follow a trail that's already laid out. Just like in the wilderness, if you follow your inner compass, your values, your convictions, your interests, all things that Webb has prepared you to do, you'll eventually forge a trail suited to you. I promise. Last lesson. We're wrapping up, don't worry. Especially in the wilderness, it takes a village. And yes, I am cribbing this from my boss. The lessons of Fossil Ridge and the Kapirowitz are mostly about independence and self-reliance. But Webb also taught me important lessons about community. Somewhere midway into our freshman year, the 27 girls in my class headed to glorious Barstow for the mandatory paleontology initiation. I know, we all remember that Barstow trip. So much fun. I can still picture that campsite. Lots of dust. We would turn over our shoes to prevent critters from crawling in. Most of all, I remember, I couldn't sleep that night. Camping can be loads of fun, but there are only so many shooting stars a girl can watch out in the desert before nature starts calling. It was 2 a.m., then 3 a.m. I whispered, "Anybody awake?" I heard one response instantly, and then a chorus of others. We were all having the same dilemma. To go or not to go. So, about a quarter of our class trekked across the pitch-dark campsite with our brand new mag lights and waited for each and every classmate before again crossing what felt like the Sahara. Indeed, it took a village that night. As important as it is to climb that steep mountain on your own, or find your way in the absence of a trail, it's just as important to nurture your friendships and relationships, because there will come a time when you're out there, you'll feel completely alone, and you'll really need a friend. For me, the friendships that began nearly 15 years ago during my class's freshman week are indeed still friendships I count on, including my dearest friend from Webb, who came to support me today. I don't know where Kelly is. I don't see you, but she's there. I know she's there. In conclusion, there's no better symbol for the sense of Webb's community than this football field. It's the site of endless soccer and track practices, Webb days, Mr. Satig's observatory, and also for my class, it was the site of our first overnighter, together under the stars during freshman week. That night, long ago, my class's Webb chapter began. Just as today on this field, your next chapter begins. And in that next chapter, don't fear the wilderness. You have what it takes. Just remember, take one step at a time, follow that inner compass and forge your own trail, and take care of your village. Also, stay hydrated, wear sunblock, pack snacks, never smoke, and never feed the bears. Bad idea. Bad idea. Doc did it once, it was bad. Most of all, never forget that Vivian Webb has taught each of us how to shoot for the stars, whether we're sleeping under them or not. Webb is a gem, and you have a lot to be proud of and look forward to. Congratulations and thank you.